Hi, everyone. I'm Vinaya. I'm 17, and I don't have a PhD. I wanted to say that today because I'm a tech nerd. I love to code, I love to build, and when I was young, instead of Christmas gifts for Santa, I used to have this bucket list of world problems I wanted to solve. And in order to do so, I thought I had to get a PhD by 28, rise up a corporate ladder, and then maybe someday be able to make an impact. Basically, I used to think influence could only come with age, if I can get this clicker to work. So I used to thought influence could only come with age, but I didn't want to wait that long. And so I set off on a journey to make the impact I would have at 40 today, while I'm still in high school. Here's how it all began. When I was 14, I started to code a bunch and explore a bunch. I began coding games, algorithms, beautiful websites, whatever struck my interest really. I ended up going down this rabbit hole of building full stack apps, working with blockchain, and more recently AI. Long story short, I fell in love with technology and its ability to solve real world problems. Now that I had these skills, I decided, why don't I tackle those problems that I was so passionate about? And so I started going down that list one by one. Cancer, I built an AI model to detect brain tumors in medical images. Dirty water in third world countries, I built a new and improved water filtration system with computer vision detection to detect bacteria and then kill it off with electrode lattices. And then finally, 911 dispatch offices being overloaded and understaffed. I decided to build an automated 911 AI-based officer to triage these calls. I was able to start making an impact and build these really sick projects, yes, but I realized I wasn't making an impact because I wasn't actually implementing these projects. And that's when I realized I hadn't been doing it all wrong. This entire time, I wanted to make my mark and leave an impact. But because I wasn't implementing these projects, I wasn't able to. And so I decided to look at that bucket list of mine again, all those problems I wanted to solve. And this time, I decided to focus on the problem I actually cared about the most: climate change. After witnessing the devastating effects of poor air quality in India and noticing how all in Pakistan there were floods occurring, I knew I needed to tackle this issue. But this turn around, I decided to remember that influence lies in passion, hard work, and results. And I need to make sure I'm actually implementing my projects in order to make that change. And so I decided, how can I tackle the rising issue of climate change? And so by focusing in on climate change, that problem, and focusing on practicality and feasibility, not just the exciting tech, I ended up working in climate for a while and began to see some massive success. The first project I decided to take on in this domain was Genie Eats, a food marketplace to help tackle the rising issue of food waste, specifically that 3.3 million tons of food that was getting thrown away because it was left over at restaurants and hotels. I ended up getting recognized for my work by winning funding and mentorship at the Ingenious Plus regional competition and began to see that I can make an impact. I then got hired to develop Tree Trackers, a platform to help track and monitor tree growth in order to help Canada reach its carbon sequestration goals. I ended up staying with the fantastic organization for more than 2 years, helped build the application up from scratch, and began to see my impact when more than 200 students, MPs, and nonprofit organizations like Acer began using my work. At this point, I had really fallen in love with climate tech, and I wanted to solve climate change. But in order to do so, I realized I'd have to go bigger, tackle one of those greater contributors of climate change. And so I broke down the problem and kept coming back to energy, contributing to more than 2/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions. And so with research, I confirmed that the best way to solve this issue is begun switching to more renewables and using more electric devices. But in reality, grid upgrades and updates are incredibly slow. And if we were to switch to electric devices like EVs, as outlined in our federal goals, our electric grid would actually blow up because we wouldn't be able to sustain that load. This is a huge problem. The current solution sucked. and I couldn't believe no one was properly doing anything about it. And so I took it upon myself to develop a simulator software and design platform to help build and prototype that grid of the future. I now had a project that could help us optimize the grid upgrades to meet supply and demand. But I then realized that if we go to embark on those grid upgrades, we'd only be causing more faults and more defects because the current grid monitoring system is super expensive and outdated. And that's how I decided to shift gears and begin focusing on electric grid monitoring instead. And that's how I got to my most recent project, Volt Vision AI, where I'm utilizing autonomous drones, computer vision, and 3D and thermal imaging to embark on cheaper, faster, and safer electric grid monitoring and transmission line fault detection. I've now been able to share my work on this project at South by Southwest just last month, and I've started to gain loads of traction. By working on these projects for the past 3 years, getting funding, users, and recognized, I now see that influence can be redefined. Influence doesn't necessarily just have to mean titles, degrees, or seniority. Everyone's journey is going to be a little different. And for me, this looks more like taking action, making it real, and working with companies and organizations, large and small, to leave my mark. With these learnings, I've now begun making it real more often by networking with industry professionals and sharing my work at tech conferences like South by Southwest and Elevate. But my biggest learning of all is that it's what we do with this influence that really matters. By sharing my learnings, growth, and advice on my YouTube, Substack, Medium, and more to inspire fellow women, by attending youth conferences like Pump Plus to support more youth to get into STEM, and by supporting and organizing hackathons like Youth Cultures, where I've given technical workshops, I'm hoping to make an even greater impact. Because it's up to us, those with influence, to give back to our communities and help more women and other marginalized communities to break in. I'm Vinaya. I'm hoping to inspire positive change, and I hope you all join me on my journey. I still might not have that PhD, but I found other ways to leave my mark. And this is how I'm redefining influence. Thank you.